One of the unique aspects of Vision's model is that is the notion of modern isms. It's the subtle, unintentional ways in which oppression impacts us in 2013. When Visions first started in 1984, the belief that racism had all but declined in the United States was still informing policy decisions, and in many ways was what we all wanted to believe as a country. As in the ensuing years, many other organizations have sprung up on the horizon who actually, as it became clear that the legacy of discrimination and exclusion was not ended, and so other groups have gotten into this work. Our work, based on the modern racism theory that was developed at Duke University and other places in the 1970s and 80s, which is sometimes now called unconscious bias also, spoke to the fact that changing these dynamics is both personal, but it's also structural. And though we've made a lot of progress in terms of the personal level, that is, people know what's appropriate to say or not say, we have not in many ways changed who controls the processes of most of our systems and organizations and governmental structures and corporate structures, etc. So the legacy of who's in charge continues to favor those who've historically been in charge. And modern racism really gives us a way of looking at that. It also looks at how from places where we are in a historically excluded group, we may learn behaviors and practices that actually collude with that reality. So the whole concept of challenging modern oppression and the modern internalized ways in which we practice, in which we collude with oppression, is a major element of the Visions model that we think is really exciting and unique, and it helps give individuals and organizations a framework for genuinely transforming their organization to one in which power is shared as well as differences are valued.
That was great. So could you say a little bit more about the Visions process?
Visions process, as I have indicated, works at 4 levels, and it implies that these levels interact and feed off of each other, and that when we are looking at how to make change in an organization, we have to look at how things are happening, not just what people are doing. Many of our facilitators are trained in group process skills and understand the value of noticing how people work together, how people solve problems, how people bring their full selves into a space, that those elements impact what will happen in terms of outcome.
That's great. Could we just go back over there, because there's also, that was a great answer, and if you could just do it again, there was like that same answer. So could you tell?
I don't remember that.
So talk about the basic elements of modern racism theory
you say it didn't come out? It didn't come out?
No, it was just, there was a reflection on your glasses. Oh. So I just want to give them more options about what piece to pick.
Okay. And the last time I did it without my glasses, but I think it's better to do it with them.
Yeah, glasses are who you are.
Yeah. In terms of process, process is the how, content is the what. Mm-hmm. We believe that it is important to pay attention to and understand process, and we've, over the years, learned to name and define what process level interventions are at each of the 4 levels, and how to teach people to recognize process and to address the process of how things are happening, as well as addressing the content, because we understand that that how people do things is as important as what, and that often in traditional Western culture we aren't taught to understand process, and yet in terms of creating multicultural systems, process rules. If people aren't feeling empowered at a process level, it's very difficult to address the content efficiently.
Could you give like a U.S. structure, kind of like what kinds of sessions, how long, how often, what are the different ways you work with people?
Our approach is to first start with an assessment and to understand what are the challenges facing an organization at each of the 4 levels. And once we have done that, then we determine along with the client what what's the best strategy for intervention. So so the process will be determined by that. And we have 4-day workshops, which you will see all of this on our website. We have 4-day workshops. We have various models that fit with the needs of the client.
Great. That seems like lots of material. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Tell me the thing that you think is most fun to do as a visions consultant. I don't like their questions so much. So I want to try something to get you smiling and talking.
Yeah.
What's what's most fun? What's the thing that gets you most excited when you're with clients?
I think that one of the other assumptions, and in some ways this is about process also, is that each of us is impacted. Each of us, there's a cost of oppression, a cost of exclusion on everyone, on both the person who may be doing the excluding, or on the system that's doing the excluding, as well as on the people or systems who are left out. Mm-hmm. And so one of the most meaningful, I don't know about fun, but one of the most meaningful aspects of the work is helping people understand how they may have been, if they're in a position of not understanding the ways in which they've been impacted by this process, by this dynamic, having a light bulb go off as people begin to see the cost of exclusion for everyone, and beginning to then see why we aren't doing this work to fix those who are new to our organization, but we're doing this so that our organization is a stronger organization. So it's that dynamic process that allows organizations to enhance their capacity to support everyone through recognizing that we all lose when we collude with a system that is oppressive to someone.
That's great.
Another piece that I think is really sustaining is noticing how, for many folks who have been, many organizations that have been historically in the dominant group, or that have been historically all white or all male or all heterosexual or all of one religious group, to watch the humility with which those organizations begin to try on looking and understanding what they don't know, to open up to the reality that we don't know what we don't know, and that learning about all these differences actually is exciting and stimulating when we can get beyond the fear that we might have about the unknown. And so again, over the 29 years that we've been doing this work, or over the years since 1984 that we've been doing this work, the moments when that synergy happens in an organization or in an individual's reality are very inspiring to everyone who's there.
What about the retreats, the training process for the consultants? And this is
Visions,
the last one I'm going to
Visions has, in addition to starting our own 501c3, the Right Center, as a way of learning how to create a community development organization, we also decided to use our own diverse, inclusive, multicultural consultant team as a laboratory for our own learning, so that we determined to learn to walk the talk in our relationships with each other and in our managing of our own organizational dynamics. And in that context, we have sponsored retreats every 18 months to 2 years, most years since 1984, for our consultants and our consultants in training, with the goal of continuing to deepen our own understanding of this multicultural process of change, and also to strengthen our skills skills and resources as we prepare to go out and work with other groups. And that our most recent retreat, we integrated young people in a significant way for the first time, and so that legacy is continuing into the next. It's continuing.
Yeah. You've spoken about the legacy project and just now about the importance of bringing young people into our training process. So why is Visions needed in the future? Why do we need Visions for the next 20 years?
Well, it's interesting because I think that the reality of the United States, when we look historically, is that since 1965 with the passage of the Civil Rights Act, and now there has not been sufficient change in terms of policy shifting, in terms of power shifting. We have actually been in this period where, for mainstream U.S. culture, the belief is that racism is a thing of the past. And we could apply this to all the isms. I'm using race here as the teaching variable. Race, ethnicity, because race, ethnicity, what has changed is that we are talking now about ethnic groups, cultural groups who are coming in as immigrants from other parts of the world, Latin America in particular, but over the world. So that since 1975 until now, there has not been significant policy, institutional change. And so even as we pay lip service to diversity, the structural nature of the oppression that led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act is still here. So as long as that is the case, we will need this kind of work. And what is sad and angering, actually, is that we operate as a society as if this were not so. And so our work over the years has been to continue to shine a light on the ways in which the inequities and the disparities that exist in organizations are still connected to these same dynamics. And we see it as critical to bring young people into this conversation, because many young people have grown up in these 25, 30, 40 years since 1965 with the explicit message that those are old issues, and yet with the experience of continued exclusion on the basis of their differences in many situations. So they have the experience without the language and awareness of the history often, which makes it more complex and more difficult to change. So what we see is, as we educate young people about the continued legacy, it, one, helps them feel empowered to interrupt the oppression they may be experiencing, and it also helps them begin to name their version of what we experienced growing up, and to have tools and strategies to address that.
I think we got some